To think of these creatures as beasts is a grave mistake. We have observed their vanguard organisms herd prey like cattle into the path of the main swarms. We have seen them expend tides of lesser beasts, so that their enemies have no ammunition left when their leaders attack, and armored columns channeled into narrow defiles where but one of their assault beasts can tear through an entire tank company. Only yesterday, we received a pick capture of several platoons falling back into the keep of Nex Bastion, only to be trapped and slaughtered by burrowing organisms that burst from the ground. These creatures have shown evidence of a tactical acumen that speaks of a far worse threat than that posed by a mere beast. The Imperium of Man monitors threats from untold war zones enacted by rival species, each consumed with a hunger to despoil humanity. Driven by a need to propagate their heretical ideals, beliefs, and glories, it is regardless rare to find an enemy driven by a singular purpose of primal nature despite its own advanced technologies and intelligence. For today, we shall elucidate the insidious campaign of violence perpetrated by a returned foe of the Ultima Segmentum. The onslaught of Hive Fleet Kraken. The Second Tyrannic War. The Imperial Fortress world of Mortrex was one of the most heavily defended planets in Segmentum Ultima, a world where fortifications sprouted from every mountainside and bastions punctuated the landscape. For days, when Hive Fleet Kraken attacked, this formidable defense held back the vicious hordes. However, during the 10th day of invasion, the Imperial Guard defending Mortrex encountered a winged bioform they had never seen before. Without warning, the monster drove towards the human entrenchments, stabbing at the Imperial Guardsmen with lightning-quick strikes of its tail. The creature's victims were thus injected with Ripper parasites, many of which grew to maturity within a few heartbeats, devouring their hosts from the inside out. Amidst agonized death screams, a swarm of Rippers ruptured through cracked bones and torn flesh as they emerged in a spray of blood. The few survivors told of the new Tyranid threat, a horrifying creature that implants organisms into its still-living prey. They called this creature the Parasite, and all knew that to face it was to risk the most horrific death imaginable. 2 weeks later, the planet of Mortrex was overrun by vast, ravenous tides of Ripper swarms. All that remained was a single transmission that warned of the Parasite. The first campaign, waged by the Tyranid menace, came close to sundering the most venerated chapter of the Adeptus Astartes. The Ultramarines, vanguards of humanity's indomitable spirit, had waged war against the Hive Fleet of Behemoth during 745.M41. Their domains of Ultramar brought low by a never-before-seen foe of unrelenting savagery. Their entire first company annihilated during the desperate struggle to preserve the crowning jewel of their civilization, Macragge. For over 250 years, myriad technomagi of the Adepts of Mars had studied what remained of their onslaught in attempts to glean insight into this new enemy's weakness. Yet a quarter century hereafter, a new form of the Great Devourer unleashed its fury upon the stars. Its first victims beyond the notice of Imperial authorities, as it butchered minor Xenos races within the Galactic East. Finding traces of Genestealer infestation on the world of Imgal, the Salamanders chapter put such heretics to the torch as its influence attempted to spread from its nearby moons. A splinter fleet of Hive Fleet Behemoth, now known as Gorgon, harried the Tau Empire preceding this new foe during 903.M41, their lives saved only by the valiant efforts of the Cadian 18th Army, who aided their plight at the Battle of Worldspine Ridge on Kel-Shan 2 years subsequently. Imperial bureaucrats, receiving reports of a new threat harrying the stars, believing such incidents to be merely similar conglomerations of the fractured behemoth, little would humanity know that this new variant was far more insidious than its predecessor. More alike to a scalpel than the hammer which represented its forebear, this new Hive Fleet began to spread its influence in more covert ways. Ravenous beasts devouring billions upon largely undefended worlds as poisonous spores covered the surfaces of far-flung outposts. Decades of planning was beginning to bear fruit, the Tyranids' terror raids allowing for Scythe-armed attack forms to lie dormant before striking at key military and civilian officials as mayhem and confusion spread. Its meticulously spread influence, spanning thousands of light-years, much smaller fleets than Behemoth had circumvented Imperial strongholds in order to target more vulnerable domains far from their reach. Slow to respond, the Imperium deployed small detachments to stem the tide. Rescue attempts made by the Raven Guard 4th Company on the world of Eidos, quickly pivoting to surgical strike maneuvers as the Astartes realized the true extent of their foe. Tereska fell as its planetary governor fled into the relative safety of their underground bunker, their raids joining them in abandoning their populace to be harvested, as their own survival was extended by mere days. Monks from the asteroid monastery of Salem poisoned themselves and their ecosystem with necrotizing rotweed in attempts to deny the Devourer their meal. Yet records speculate that even such extreme measures did little to diminish the appetite of the Devourer. The Hive Fleet swelled in size across 100 worlds, its mass beginning to coalesce into two large contingents, intent on targeting the most crucial bastions which separated its remaining mass. Agents of the Ordo Hereticus began to investigate the worsening situation within the domains of the Galactic East. Hails of rebellion on the world of Ikar 4, made by the so-called Brotherhood, bearing signs of Genestealer corruption. The young Inquisitor, Agmar, leading an elite task force drafted from Talassa Prime to investigate Ikar 4. This promising scion of the Ordo Hereticus deployed to find officers of the Adeptus Arbites, confronting cultists in street warfare, whilst attempting to sabotage the planet's genitorium in efforts to prevent their spread. Witnessing the Brotherhood overrun the Adeptus Arbites fortress precinct, portents of the Emperor's Tarot forebode death on a scale not seen in millennia. Agmar taking the initiative to send a distress signal to a conclave of the Inquisition, petitioning aid for Adeptus Astartes support before the conflict escalated further. As telepaths scrambled to reach any and all military forces capable of reaching Ikar 4, Imperial authorities began the fell task of consigning which planets to abandon to death, as they ordered flotillas to support crucial Forge and Hive worlds. New and terrifying forms of the Devourer began to reveal themselves. The fortress world of Mortrex, beset by hordes of Ripper swarms, birthed from a dreaded beast known only as the Parasite, as its spawn infected civilians and devoured their flesh from within. The Lamenters chapter, still undertaking their penitent crusade for their misdeeds made during the Badab War, making all haste in the mining worlds of Devlan. These pious souls sacrificed an entire company of men to allow millions to evacuate the swarm, led by their leader designated as the Red Terror. Several of such ships, which escaped, traded one doom for another, as pilgrims venturing to the neighboring world of Adri's Hope left only gore-spattered interiors for the Inquisition to find years thereafter. The noble princeps, Goeth, piloting the Imperator Titan, Metallum Olympus, fought a tendril of the Hive Fleet alone, their machine god of war, after days of bitter fighting, sundered on the world of Horst Prime. Overrun by scrambling Hierophant Biotitans, the Princeps detonated their plasma reactors as a last act of defiance. The detonation of their venerated Imperator, vaporizing the swarm and leaving a crater which is visible from orbit to this day. Yet not all conquests of this foe required the spilling of blood, for in instances such as the feral planet of Lamarno, its human tribesmen willingly boarded the Tyranids' bioships, giving praise to their living god before being consumed. Designating the Hive Fleet, alike to all others using the custom of ancient Terran legends, this threat would be known as Kraken, a lumbering monster which lurks beneath the ocean until the opportune time to strike. For the tendrils of Kraken had only just begun to unfurl, and many calamitous campaigns would be fought to cast it back into the depths. We retreat, we fall back, we make strategic withdrawals, we consolidate, we evacuate. When in the name of all that's holy are we going to fight back against the Tyranid threat? Events at Ikar 4 and Macragge have proven that the Hive Fleets can be stopped. But where are the armies and the ships to stop them? Why have the Adeptus Mechanicus ceased sending us munitions and weapons from the Forge worlds? Do they believe they can stand alone and seek only to protect their own domains? These are important questions which demand answers at the highest level and, in my personal opinion, the punishment of those responsible. Assignment to penal regiments in the path of the Tyranid advance would seem more appropriate. Believe me, sirs, I can appreciate the outposts and minor stations cannot be held against the infernal numbers of these aliens without an unconscionable expenditure of force. I have seen with my own eyes the results of such folly. I can also appreciate that the strategy of Holy Terror is not mine to question, but I fear the perspective gained from viewing reports from thousands of light years away belies the seriousness of the situation here on the Eastern Fringe. As Ikar-4 desperately held on for Astartes' reinforcements, so too did among its most honored creeds answer hails for aid, calling for deliverance from the Kraken's aggression. The Sighs of the Emperor, third founding successors of the legendary Ultramarines chapter of Space Marines, received hails from the jungle world of Miral Prime, the battles ahead proving to be the defining wound to which these sons of Guilliman would forever bear scars. Their chapter world of Sofa, standing proud as among the 500 worlds of Ultramar since the days of the Legion of old. For over 10 millennia, this symbol of the Imperium's might had raised hardy people who stood in its defense. Legendary as the site of the Pharos device, which proved invaluable in transporting resources to the loyalist campaign of the Horus Heresy. This holdover of the contingent Imperium Secundus housed a mysterious Necron artifact, which when detonated, had acted as the beacon which had drawn the Great Devourer to the galaxy. Access to the world restricted by order of Primarch Roboute Guilliman following the great scouring of the traitors to the throne. The inheritors of the 199th Aegida Company had garrisoned this world of agriculturalists and adopted their harvesting tool as their sigil. The phantoms of Guilliman's once secret 11th Company, in contravention of his own outlines of the Codex Astartes, nonetheless gloried for their stalwart service to the Imperium. These wardens of the Pharos would soon stage the final battle to decide the fate of their homeworld. Chapter Master Mansirius Forcira, dispatching Captain Theodosis and his 5th Company to confront Hive Fleet Kraken within the Sapphire Cluster. Theodosis tasked his subordinate, Commander Cassios, to lead a task force to distract the Tyranids, whilst his own men flanked their targeted hive ship. The entire company destroyed during the maneuver. Cassios escaped the devastation and hid within the heart of the bioship, activating his Susan membrane to survive in suspended animation for 3 years, hidden from within the heart of the enemy. Seeking to avenge the slain 5th Company, Forcira and his 1st Company elite ventured further into the Sapphire Cluster, recalling all available men to defend their homeworld in his absence. 6 companies stood in the defense of Sofa, yet little did the Astartes know that their homeworld was among the most crucial targets of Hive Fleet Kraken. Their master of the arsenal, 3rd Captain Thracius, attempting to fortify the planet's defenses in haste as the Great Devourer descended. Sergeant Remus leading a boarding mission to destroy the bioship in orbit of Sofa from within. His kill team failed to breach the Tyranid defenses, as mycetic spores rained down on Sofa in the billions, decimating the Astartes manning the barricades surrounding their monastery. The Scythes lacked the numbers to repel such an overwhelming force. Their last stand within the fortress monastery, the Aegida, costing hundreds of lives in their doomed last stand, until all organic matter upon its surface was picked clean by the Tyranids. Little more than an asteroid bearing signs of prior life, only 200 Astartes managed to flee the husk of Sofa, regrouping within the Miral system as Chapter Master Forcira received word of the fall of his chapter world. Utterly devastated at the loss of his homeworld, Forcira rallied his men within orbit of Miral Prime, having endured great misery inflicted by the Tyranids. The Scythes resolved not to let Miral Prime suffer the same fate. Deploying upon the landmark known as the Giant's Coffin, this rocky outcropping would prove a fitting monument of the Scythes' valor, as the last 162 of their creed demanded vengeance for Sofa. Purging waves of Xenos as they charged through the jungle world's canopies, though encircled, the Scythes of the Emperor fought on with bitter hatred in their hearts. The steep cliffs of the Giant Coffin's rocky outcrops spattered with gore as a mark of their defiance. Chapter Master Forcira, ordering what remained of his men to withdraw, he would not be remembered as the Space Marine who allowed the extinction of his chapter. His last act, passing on the artifact known as the Emperor's Scythe to Captain Frasius as the last surviving captain of their creed. Escaping by a Thunderhawk gunship, the Scythes abandoned Miral to its fate, anger stoking within their hearts as they watched their chapter master and his first company perish at the hands of an enormous lictor. The planet fated to exterminatus with the Second War's conclusion. Not even the Giant's tomb would mark the gravestone of such valiant souls for long. Chapter Master Frasius, now commanding less than a company of his chapter's remains, their destiny seemingly fated to slow extinction as Hive Fleet Kraken continued its rampage. Resolving to continue his chapter's legacy as depleted as they were, Frasius deployed his men to the world of Bosphor as Astartes' reinforcements of his primogenitor hurtled towards Ikar 4. As Kraken's malice spread, other chapters fared worse than the Wardens of Pharos. The Knights of Eternity rendered extinct as breaches in quarantine protocol allowed Kraken's influence to spread. Drawn to the slaughter befalling the Ultima Segmentum, the World Eater Chaos Lord, Rograk's Bloodhand, began his Skull Reap against the Tyranids. The bloodshed wrought by the thrall of the Blood God, drawing Drukhari and Orcs into the melee, which further bolstered Kraken's adaptations to combat. The bastion world of Eorkshire fell, as Deathwatch kill teams detonated charges within the bioships which fed on its corpse. Such minor victories diminished, as spores rained down on the Forge world of Graia, from its fully corrupted neighbouring moons. The High Lords of Terra declaring total war against Hive Fleet Kraken as the death toll continued to mount. The Ultima Segmentum now endured smothering violence not seen since the days of the Horus Heresy. Yet as the Imperium applied its vast war machine to confront Hive Fleet Kraken, a much diminished Xenos race prepared for the potential extinction of their own people.
My loyal warriors, my kin, by deed and bond, our home faces obliteration. Our people are dying, the light of Iyanden fades. But it is not yet extinguished. Outcasts and exiles, follow me to war. Like a spear of flame, we shall pierce the darkness. We will bring ruin to the void-spawned filth that seek to defile the shrine of Asurian. If we are to die, let it be here. Let it be with blades in hand, amidst the spirits of our ancestors and the bodies of our foes. What say you, exiles of Iyanden? Are you with me?
Among the craft worlds of the Eldari Xenos, Iyanden has for millennia stood as among its most lauded and populous. Their pedigree is among the mightiest remnants of this fractured empire, having outlasted entire civilizations of upstart species. Yet as Rangers found signs of the encroaching darkness of Hive Fleet Kraken, this ancient witness of eons of war would brace for a battle which would threaten their survival. The most sizable tendril of Hive Fleet Kraken, comparable in size to that pushing inexorably for Ikar 4, Farseer Kelmon knew that escape was impossible from this looming threat, and so declared that all hands of Iyanden must prepare for war. Awakening an avatar to aid in their defense, Kelmon, despite criticism from his peers, demanded that every spirit stone interred within venerated tombs of the fallen must be retrieved and placed within Wraithbone constructs. Willing to sacrifice the wisdom and ancient experience of such long-dead souls in deference to extinction, Kelmon would use any and all resources to combat the threat, which would sunder all they held dear, regardless. For 20 days, the Eldar prepared, the final week of their toil harrying their morale as the shadow in the warp cast by the Kraken eroded their resolve due to their nature as highly psychically attuned beings. On the back foot, before battle had even been joined, waves of thousands of bioships arrived within proximity of the craft world, as the flotilla of Iyanden began efforts to repel their advance. Destroying countless Tyranids with each volley, regardless of their exploits, gradually, the flotilla began to receive damage, their beleaguered voidcraft unable to be repaired within the thick of battle lines, as the Kraken hurled expendable fodder to overrun such weak points. Unaccustomed to wars of attrition, the Eldar faltered, the Great Devourer's fangs gradually digging deeper as each loss compounded their imperiled defenders. Struck by two rapid waves of massive scale, when an opening presented itself, their flotilla collapsed, a tidal wave of razor-sharp talons spilling from the bloated bioships, which impacted within the heart of the craft world. Vomiting millions of Tyranids from the battle-ravaged transports, which swarmed into the heart of Iyanden domains. The close-range fighting choked Tyranid bodies in piles, which its peers regardless clamoured over to close the distance to melee range. Termagants led the way, confronted by volleys of Guardian arms fire. The Aspect Warriors and Wraith Guards desperately carving a path through the swarm in attempts to sunder the larger bioforms. Swooping Hawks and Gargoyles wrestled for aerial superiority, Wraith Lords grappling with Carnifexes as Trigons rushed towards the Eldar's precious Wraith Knights. Bio-Titans fought Phantom Titans as the ants below bled and died. Warlocks and Zoanthropes psychically sparring until the dead of Iyanden outnumbered the living. The Fortress of Tears fell, then the Shrine of Asurian, the Fortress of Silence, defiled by the Tyranids as craft welders wept to see such ruination to their esteemed and ancient home. Yet in Iyanden's hour of direst need, the returned Admiral of the Eldritch Raiders, Prince Iriel, returned from his exile, turning the tide of battle as reports of the devastation forced their prodigal son to abandon his vow to never return. Piercing Kraken's blockade, Uriel rallied what remained of the flotilla into a cohesive fleet, preventing enemy reinforcements from reaching the craft world and targeting the largest bioships. Hours of battle saw Iriel repel 2 further waves of attack, the heavy casualties wrought by the Kraken permissible, as the Tendril, now having suffered heavy casualties, withdrew from the fray. The Eldar within the craft world hunted like rats as the survivors of Iyanden fought a desperate ground war. The commander of the Tyranid swarms, a Hive Tyrant, commanded its forces to hurl themselves into what remained of their lines, in a desperate act to seize victory without orbital support. The Hive mined close to achieving victory in consigning Iyanden to the pages of history. The Avatar of Cain confronted the Hive Tyrant as it called a dozen Carnifexes to fight in its stead. As the Avatar fell to the overwhelming swarm of such hulking abominations, Prince Iriel disembarked from his ship onto the surface, charging into the enemy lines, wielding the Iyanden relic, the Spear of Twilight. Said to burn away the soul of any who wielded it, Uriel, regardless of the ominous risk, thrust its tip into the Hive Tyrant's jaws until it burst from the monster's skull, the collapse of the gigantic Tyranid spreading disarray among the swarm. Signaling the defeat of Hive Fleet Kraken, the invaders scattered and were dealt with piecemeal, Iyanden surviving at great cost as 4/5 of the populace were slain. The body of Farseer Kelmon located once the battle had subsided, the shattered spirit stones which littered the ground, forfeiting the souls within to the clutches of She Who Firsts. Inquisitor Sevak compiling a report on the Eldar's victory, a crippling blow had been dealt to Hive Fleet Kraken, supported by minor victories won by Imperial defenders across the Ultima Segmentum. Yet one final battle would prove pivotal in securing victory against the Tyranid menace, the Battle of Ikar IV. Whereas Hive Fleet Behemoth had stayed together and obliterated one world after another, Kraken moved as many independent Hive Fleets, attacking across a front which covered thousands of light years. Worlds were often bypassed, isolated or attacked unexpectedly, making a defense almost impossible to mount. The Imperium was forced to concentrate its forces on the most strategic Forge worlds and Hive worlds, while it evacuated or simply abandoned many others to their fate. This policy resulted in the tremendously bloody Battle of Ikar IV in 993.M41. By the grace of the Emperor, the Ultramarines were present, and once again their chapter master presided over a major defeat of the Tyranid Armada. This time, however, the Tyranids were fought primarily on the surface of Ikar IV, and a terrible toll was paid by its population, the planet being left a charnel house of death and destruction. At around the same time, the Eldar craft world of Iyanden was besieged by another part of the Hive Fleet, and while it also survived the assaults of wave upon wave of Tyranids, it was left a shattered and crumbling remnant of its former glory. Even after suffering these 2 defeats, Hive Fleet Kraken was not stopped, but 2 tendrils of its advance were shattered, and the critical situation developing on the eastern fringe was stabilized somewhat. After 39 days of grueling fighting within the streets of Lomas, as they waited for reinforcement, the citizenry of Ikar IV received Adeptus Astartes' hails. the battle barge flagship Octavius, clad in blue and gold, heralding the arrival of the Sons of Ultramar. Chapter Master Marneus Calgar looked down upon the surface of Ikar IV. His old enemy, which had ravaged his homeworld and brought low the pride of the Ultramarines, owed a debt of retribution. Unleashing Ultramarine forces via drop pod assault, the Genestealer cults lurking beneath the surface of Ikar IV proved no match for the Sons of Ultramar. The prelude to the true invasion of the Hive Fleet, proving to be good target practice as they cleansed the subterranean lairs and cathedral catacombs of heretic filth. Inquisitor Agmar's efforts destroying the planet's genitoriums, allowing the Ultramarines to land with minimal casualties. It did not take long for the Astartes to secure the Brotherhood cult's armories within the Governor's Palace, as Astra Militarum armored divisions drove them from their hovels. Teleporting a squad of 20 Terminator veterans into the heart of the Brotherhood's chapel headquarters, the Astartes purged the clawed denizens with heavy flamers, as those that attempted to escape were cut down by lasfire from surrounding Astra Militarum forces. Felling hundreds of Genestealers, which hid in secret passageways burrowed beneath the chapel's altar. Though several Terminators perished in the melee, the Genestealer Patriarch was vanquished by a strike of their Terminator Librarian's Force Axe. 3 weeks of combat ensued as the Ultramarines resecured Ikar IV, warning of the psychic phenomena known as the Shadow in the Warp, heralding the arrival of the true threat now that the hive mind was cut off with the dead cultists. Kraken loomed, yet Marneus Calgar would not stand idle. His efforts in rallying the defenses of Ikar IV, a vital act of vindication for the lessons learned from the Battle of Macragge. Inquisitor Agmar's decisive actions had brought the 13th valuable time. The prompt purge of the Genestealers, allowing surviving planetary defense forces and Adeptus Arbites officers, and reinforcements of the Astra Militarum regiments, including the 13th Penal Legion known as the Last Chancers, to dig into the terrain and prepare ample countermeasures. Planets between the Hive Fleet and Ikar IV were consumed in its wake, the amassed remaining strength of Kraken mimicking the tactics of Behemoth as it surged towards the planet, alike to a battering ram. During 922.M41, the battle was joined. The bloated Hive Fleet, which had gorged itself on hundreds of worlds, pitted against the indomitable strength of mankind. Gaunts, warriors, Carnifexes, Tyrannofexes, and Hierophant Biotitans, committing everything at the Hive Mind's disposal to consume the planet. The first Tyrannic War veterans spearheading Marneus Calgar's counterattack. The students of Chaplain Ortan Cassius's teachings tore rends through Kraken's battle lines, armed as they were, as specialists combating the Great Devourer, as almost a year of combat ensued. Once more opposed by a Tyranid Swarmlord, alike to his humbling during the Battle of Macragge, Marneus Calgar slew the foul creature, now fighting from a superior position of strength. The death of the Swarmlord disorientating the Xenos hordes, allowing for a swift victory. Driving Hive Fleet Kraken from Ikar IV, though its splitting of its forces had proven devastating to Imperial counterattacks, when amassed into a single force, it proved to lack the brawn of its predecessor, of Hive Fleet Behemoth. Yet hundreds of worlds still lay besieged, despite 2 critical losses in its campaign. The fragmented tendrils of Kraken fleeing to the galactic core, as billions of Tyranids swarm population centers, consuming the citizenry within a single night on multiple worlds. Victory had been won in the name of the Imperium, yet dozens of bioships assimilated into the form of splinter fleets were enough to subsume entire systems. Each burgeoned with biomass within unsuspecting sectors of space, as ever greater Imperial responses were required to contend their numbers. Kraken had been defeated thanks to the efforts of both the Imperium and Eldari, the unwitting allies and cores, sundering both of the Hive Fleet's amassed assaults and driving it scurrying to safety. Never truly thwarted, as fragments turned into their own respective minor Hive Fleets such as Medgar's Razor and the Fangs of Vanfell, Genestealer cults such as that of the Court of the Nephilim King continue to burgeon from the remnants of Hive Fleet Kraken, even now. Imperial Fist Astartes on the world of Hugin's Anvil laid trip mines and razor wire to counter a forewarned advance of such a splinter fleet. The corpses of Xenos dead piled high, thanks to the indomitable preparation and fortification skills of this renowned primogenitor chapter. The splinter fleet diverting half of its forces from Hugin's Anvil in response. The undefended worlds of the neighboring system of Poltaskeen would suffer despite the Sons of Dawn's prowess. Drukhari corsairs of the Flayed Skull Cabal captured lictors of the fractured Hive Fleet for further sale and study within Komorra. The meddling of the Dark Eldar costing them their lives, as it broke loose, devouring its would-be captors before submerging within the waters below the Dark City. A splinter fleet of Kraken, known as Megalodon, spread like a plague from sector to sector, slaughtering all hands within the crystal mining belt of Hydros 12 as Genestealer cults began to give praise to their majesty. Another splinter fleet, drawn into the labyrinthine pathways of the Webway by Eldar Harlequins of the Reaper's Mirth. Their attempts to lure and rout the Xenos away from their beleaguered Exodite kin, though successful, costing them dearly in lives for their efforts. The Tau Sep world of Delif, once a prosperous trading hub used by myriad alien races, was torn asunder by another splinter of Kraken. The assembled Xenos fleet, won through negotiation by Watercast diplomats, mustered quick enough to deny the Tyranids at the cost of the majority of their forces. Mobilizing billions of souls to combat the Hive Fleet's ambushes, flanking maneuvers, and encircling of its tendrils, the Imperium dispatched several Space Marine chapters to launch boarding efforts to pilfer contents of hibernating bioships for further study. The Segmentum Ultima was rife with mayhem caused by Hive Fleet Kraken, its denizens of once peaceful worlds now jaded by unheralded acts of violence by this insidious foe. Chaplain Ortan Cassius, as of then, seconded to the Death Watch during the conflict, leading a kill team to aid the mining world of Kosar Quintus during the final days of the campaign. This veteran of the First Tyrannic War put the Genestealer Patriarch within to the sword, and purged all of the populace who gave praise to its twisted glory. Studying the Imperium's defenses through continual toil, what remains of Kraken now intimately understands much of the workings of every species' war machine, political structures, hierarchies, and power bases. The fleet's martial defeats, in actuality, strategic victories gained to expand its knowledge. Its influence has not yet been purged due to its secretive and clandestine spread. For while a Kraken is not the mightiest of monsters, its strength is its ability to hide within the depths below. For no matter its scale, the void is vast enough to submerge its tendrils, and none truly know where next they might strike. Felix turned his attention outwards to the ruin of the orbital. The signs of recent reoccupation grew more obvious as they made their way towards the command hub. Again, his emotions rose up from beneath his conditioning.
"It is strange the way this makes me feel,"
he said to veteran brother Cadmus, who hailed from the Scythes of the Emperor chapter, to whom the station had belonged.
"There is so little evidence of what happened here, but what remains is as clear as a sword cut in ancient bone. While the tale of the attack is only implied, the evidence tells a more poignant story than a bloody corpse would."
They continued down a corridor lit by lumens on poles, linked by suspended cable. There was no air and no gravity, so the 11 of them walked with the strange, deliberate gait of warriors with active maglocks.
"I see everywhere the signs of bioweapons, puncture wounds to the metal, acid burn, the marks of teeth and claws, but no organics remain. All reabsorbed by the Kraken, I assume."
"That is the way of the Xenos, my lord,"
Cadmus said. Cadmus was a Scythe, but he was also a Primaris Marine, and had never been to Sofa. His voice was level, if a little distant, leading Felix to suspect he too wrestled with what he felt and what he was supposed to feel.
"You have fought the Tyranids?"
Felix asked. "My chapter makes a point of confronting them where they can," said Cadmus. "I have faced splinters only, the left behind and the lost. Nothing compared to the fleet that devoured Sofa, but deadly nonetheless." Felix nodded. The effects of the Tyranid weapons had sculpted the metal. Ahead, sunlight streamed through a huge breach in the hull. It was curious that the deck remained level, he thought, without the distortion to the deck plating one could expect from more conventional weaponry. When they drew level with the hole, he saw that the cause of the breach was not a weapon, but partial absorption. The metal had been devoured. The scrapings of tiny teeth were still bright at the edges a century later.
"They consume more than organics,"
said Cadmus, following his lord's gaze.
"The Tyranids will take everything."
"Then why not all?"
said Felix. He paused in the breach, and his security detail came to an instant halt, arrayed by order of march in a perfect protective pattern.
"A question for the Archmagos when he gets here,"
said Cadmus. Felix nodded.
"If anyone knows, I'm sure he will. Did you serve the Scythes of the Emperor long before you joined the Chosen of the Tetrarchy?"
Cadmus stared out into the void. Such blackness and such strong light created an odd, velvety effect that appeared unreal. no matter how many times it was seen.
6 years, by the Sofaran date stamp.
Felix knew this. He selected every man for his chosen personally, but he preferred to hear the information from the men himself, when he could. There was no soul in cold data. A commander learned a lot from his warriors by listening to them, even if they only said what could be more easily read. The way they spoke, the way they held themselves, and how they handled particular subjects revealed their innermost thoughts in a way written words did not. Speech revealed a humanity not even Adeptus Astartes' conditioning could blunt.
I was there on Hamagora. Most of my experience has been fighting the traitors and their demons, my lord. The Xenos are something else.
Cadmus paused to better formulate his words.
It is impossible to overestimate the hatred my brothers in the chapter hold for the Tyranids. The veterans are fixated, but it also affects we Primaris brothers too. It is a contagious hate. It defines us all.
This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. Cunning is a powerful tool when used effectively, for the deepest wound inflicted is often by the blade unseen, its edge poised at the most vulnerable weaknesses, often committed by one who misuses the trust placed in them. Rare are the positive benefits of guile, for it is by its nature an underhanded attribute. Effective when combined with the element of surprise, but diminished once its perpetrator plays their hand. Resist the urge to treat others with misdirection, deceit, and treachery, for in time you shall find the rewards of such deeds wanting. For while such tactics offer short-term gain, they shall estrange those around you. For no brotherhood nor honor can be derived from chicanery, and without loyal kindred by your side, you shall struggle to redeem yourself in the eyes of those whose aid you desperately require in your time of need.